Hello everyone. Have you recently received a 20-year letter and you don't know what to do? Are you just trying to decide whether to go to the retired reserve or get out completely? Well, let's talk with a guy who's trying to make that same decision. Stand by. Hello everyone. It's time to make a critical decision. You've just got a 20-year letter and you don't know what to do. Well, I recently was contacted by someone who has that same quandary in front of him, and he's wondering just what he should do. Now, this individual was kind enough to let me do an interview with him. Due to specifics with his career, he did not want to be identified by name, so we used a cover name. I chose to call him Nick for this interview, so we will use that name. He was very kind and had some great information. Everything you hear in this interview is probably very much along the lines of what you're thinking yourself when it comes to whether to stay in the military or to get out completely, or whatever might be going through your mind. I'm sure what you hear from him is very much what is going through your mind as well. So let's listen to what is going through Nick's mind, and then I will come back and talk about this a little bit more.
Hey Nick, welcome to the RC Retirement YouTube program. Thank you for joining us.
Well, thanks, DJ. Thanks for having me.
All right, so I've got a couple of questions lined up, nothing too horrible. So let's just start off with a get-to-know-you question, something so the audience can know that you're not just a voice on the internet. Tell us a little bit about your career. I'm sure that when you were sitting in homeroom in high school, you weren't thinking to yourself, hey, when I'm in my 40s, I'm going to retire. So tell us how you got from there all the way to here.
Well, DJ, I grew up in a military family, and I always thought I would serve in the military. And then when I was 17, I joined the National Guard and was enlisted in the infantry, and went to college at the same time, and then ended up graduating from college, and then eventually spent 15 years on active duty as an officer in the Army. And then ended up transitioning to the reserves for various reasons, primarily with the intention of obtaining a reserve retirement when I turned 60.
Now, 15 years, that's a long time to spend on active duty and then switch. What made you make that decision? You were so close to active duty retirement.
Yeah. So I deployed a couple of times, and we had moved, I guess, maybe 6 times or 7 over that 15-year period. And, the Army's changed a little bit, some for the good and some for the not as good. And my particular career path was very lucrative in the civilian sector and had some really good job opportunities. So for us, it was a better timing to enter the civilian sector. But at the same time, after spending 15 years active duty and 4 years in the National Guard, I was very interested in going into the reserves to get a reserve retirement when I turned 60. I had always been under the assumption that you had to serve a certain number of years in the reserves at the end in order to be able to retire from the reserves. And I had a good buddy of mine who we were very close and served together. And he had done the exact same thing. He had similar career paths and professions, and he had gotten out and then did 1 year in the reserves and then retired. And I had no idea, actually, that he had done it until we were in the middle of one of our moves and stopped and stayed with him and just struck up a conversation. And that's when I learned that I guess somewhere around 2001, the rules for retiring from the reserve component had changed to total federal service. And then I became very interested and started researching it.
Yeah, the 8-year rule and the 6-year rule dropped away many moons ago, and that's been a lifesaver for a lot of people's careers. All right. Well, you first came to me several weeks ago, months ago. I've lost track of time as far as the exact time of it. But you were asking about the differences between separating from service completely or transferring to the retired reserve. And of course, I filled your head with all sorts of, lollipops and butterflies on the good, bad, and the ugly. What, from your perspective, were some of the most important features of both? How would you describe that?
And so I think when you look at those two particular options, they both have things that are attractive, and then they both have things that are not attractive. I think completely separating is attractive because they can never call you again. Kind of like, hey, thanks, I enjoyed it, but this relationship is over. And I think that has certain things that are attractive, especially when you're in a skill set that's not a lot of people.
Retiree recall possibility, right?
Yeah, exactly. And again, that's uncommon, but there's a possibility. I think that when you turn 60, if you separate, you still get your retirement kicks in at that point based upon your retirement points and the percent you earned. And you also get TRICARE, for the rest of your life. And for me, it has always been more about insurance, health insurance, than it has been about money. And if you separate, then your retirement pay when you turn 60 is based upon the pay scale on the date you separated from the military. So there's a little bit less money. Now, if you are like me and have a lot of points from active duty time, and you're, up in the 40 percentile retirement of your base pay, well, if you separate and you're going to get 40-something% of your pay currently, versus if you go in the retired reserves, when you turn 60, your pay is the same percent, but it's based off the pay scale at that time, which depending on your rank could be, several $1,000s a month more as far as the base pay. So potentially it could be a $20,000 or so difference in retirement per year. But if you're a reservist that doesn't have a lot of points, who did 20 years and got their 20-year letter and is retiring, but doesn't have a huge percent, well, the difference may not be that significant because the percentage in and of itself is not that high.
Right.
But I think that the big difference to me was the healthcare differences. So if you separate, you are no longer eligible for TRICARE retired reserves. And what that is if you, for some reason, lose your job or you can't find a job or something. In my case, my concern would be if I became disabled or if one of my children or wife developed a critical illness, that the expenses and the ability to pay for your health care could be astronomical. Now, that all being said, TRICARE Retired Reserves is a little expensive. It's about $1,100 or so a month.
Right.
So it's not like TRICARE when you're retired at 60, where I'm not sure how much it is. It's like $550 or something a year.
That's TRICARE Prime, but the standard version, or what used to be called the standard version, has no monthly premium.
Yeah. Now, and I think the TRICARE Prime, is it every month or is it only like once a year or something that you pay?
Once a year.
Yeah. So, I mean, good. I know people who pay like $1,000 a month. So like $550 and you get it for the whole year. It's like phenomenal. So, so to me, trying to decide between separating versus going in the retired reserves, I think that the healthcare and the ability to access TRICARE between age 40 something and age 60, there's an advantage to that. Additionally, there's the minor things like getting on post and stuff like that, which I'm not so sure there's a lot of difference, because I think you can get a card even if you separate, but it's like a different color, but perhaps you can still get access to base. But that may be another limitation. If you separate, that might be harder to do or get. But to me, the difference primarily is the pay difference and TRICARE access before age 60.
Yeah, those two are huge. And I actually had one question on here, but I'm going to skip it because you pretty much covered it. So have you made a decision yet? Are you going to separate or go for retired reserves, if you don't mind telling it?
I think that I think I'll probably do the retired reserves. Still a little bit of hesitation, but not a lot. I think the healthcare to me makes a difference. And then, my wife is quite patriotic and, wants to continue to be considered a part of the team. So I think from that standpoint, I think there's some, patriotic kind of left in us that makes us not want to just walk away.
Household
but
always has a say.
Yeah, that's right. And I called. I can't remember what the phone number is, but the branch relations for the benefits for the Army. They were very nice. They answered very promptly. I called early in the morning. It didn't take long at all, and explained to her that I was considering separating versus being a gray area retiree and the retired reserves, and I just wanted to confirm that if I separated, I did not have access to TRICARE for the retired reserves. And she, put me on hold for a minute or so and came back and said that is correct. So.
It sounds like your branch of service was quite helpful then.
Yeah, I think so. I think they've made a big effort to try to help with some of the customer service issues there, because it is very challenging to find this information on the internet. I did forward you the one PDF file about the differences between an active, the benefits of a retired reserve. I think it's called non-active or whatever, retiree.
Non-regular.
And, non-regular. And I thought that was very helpful. They had a nice little thing at the end of it that had to do with your TRICARE benefits as well. And that's where I kind of first recognized that there was a difference between separation and retired reserves for people who are retired from the reserves. And that's what prompted me to figure out who to call. And then, called and confirmed.
Yeah, I had quite a chuckle over that when you sent me that guide, because that non-regular retirement guide was something that I had a small piece in writing, the National Guard version, and then the Army Reserves said, "Oh, we like this," and then they just took it, did some minor changes, and renamed it Army Reserve Non-Regular Retirement Guide, and republished it.
Somebody got a great bullet on their AR, I'm sure.
Oh yes. So when you sent that, I had a good laugh over it. Oh look, I know that book.
Yeah.
Very nice, very nice. All right. Well, I mean, you're obviously, I'm not going to say what your particular skill set is because you wanted to keep that to yourself, but what would you say from the average reservist perspective is the most important thing, or some of the most important things to consider when planning for retirement? From your opinion.
Well, I think, getting prepared for it in the sense of, obviously you got to make sure you got, a job that you can do, and developing a skill set within the military that's applicable to the civilian sector. But, making sure as a reservist, I guess, it was not very challenging for me because I was in the reserves for a very short period of time at the end, but making sure that they have the points updated correctly, make sure if you transition from active duty to the reserves that they, get your DD-214 and input all of that information. and making sure that you have kind of like a statement of service and all those things as you're exiting active duty to kind of show what you've done and where you've been, because that helps with the points as well. But I think, making sure that stuff's up to date. And I did, you hear a lot of stuff about the 20-year letter taking forever. And, it did not take very long. I think I called HRC in April. They looked at my file and said, in fact, sir, you can retire now if you'd like. And they updated it. And by maybe the 20th or so of May, towards the end of May, I had my 20-year letter. So I was very pleased with that. I have not started the request for retirement. I was going to do that here later this month. And I'm not sure exactly how challenging that is, but it doesn't seem that challenging. But I think when people try to decide what they want to do, I think people should not underestimate having some healthcare options, because I think the healthcare cost and insurance and stuff like that is a very fluid thing in our country right now, and no one knows exactly how expensive it'll be in the future. And TRICARE at least would be an option if you needed it, that no one could deny you based upon any kind of pre-existing conditions. At least the price does not change, for pre-existing conditions.
Right. Well, one thing I do have to ask, have you made your survivor benefit election yet?
I did. I still have to mail it back, but you got to be a real knucklehead not to choose option C. That doesn't make a bit of sense to choose. Obviously, to choose not to give any benefits to your survivors doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And then choosing the option that they don't get anything until your theoretical age of 60. I guess depending on how old you are when you're retiring. If you're retiring at 55, perhaps that's not a bad option. I don't know what the cost difference is to you individually, but that doesn't make a lot of sense. Yeah, to me that it just makes no sense at all. I know in my personal life, I know individuals who were retired from the military who died and had survivors benefits, and then their wives continue to get those benefits, obviously at the reduced rate, but for the rest of their lives. And I thought that was, absolutely amazing. And then that's the other thing too. I think people don't recognize, looking at the retired reserves, is that, or when you retire just in general, that if you retire at 40 whatever and then you die at 53, as long as you choose option C, the pay benefits kick in immediately. I was surprised to learn that the healthcare benefits don't kick in immediately. They don't kick in until 60, but of course your spouse or survivor would still be able to access TRICARE retired reserves, I believe, assuming you went into retired reserves, assuming they paid the monthly cost.
That's correct.
But I think that's something that could be considered, like if our Congress was going to change something. I think that if you passed away, then your survivor getting the pay and also, basically TRICARE standard or whatever, to me makes sense.
You might just start a class action lobbying effort here.
Yeah. I don't think that the additional cost to the government would be all that much. I don't think there's a lot of people who necessarily die between ages of 40 to 60. So, and even if that did happen, the healthcare cost of that, I don't think would be all that dramatic. So, yeah, you're the one that told me that. I was shocked to learn that, actually. I was like, what? So I informed my wife of that. And I think it's also important for people to have a plan, typed out, all of your bank account information, all of your health, life insurance information, all of the benefits that you've earned and how to get them. All of these things, policy numbers, phone numbers to call, all of that written down on a file that you have printed out and kept in a safe place, so that if something happens to you, your loved ones can just get that document, open it up, and be like, okay, this is what I need to do.
A when I die folder.
Yeah. We call it, in my household, the what if plan. So, and it's real. I've had it happen in my own life. Just pulled out the file and there it was. I knew exactly what to do. So I think that's an important thing, and especially once you retire, you really got to kind of dig deep into how would your spouse get get in touch and make the claim. And then you need in that file to have all of the forms that she's going to, or he will need to make that claim. Your 20-year letter and so on and so forth.
And I would say as much as possible pre-filled.
Yeah.
I've been working on one of those for myself and trying to pre-fill it. And if that's not a humbling event in itself, realizing your own mortality, just, oh my, what am I doing? It's certainly a heavy moment when you're preparing for your own demise, but it's something that everyone should do. That's good advice. All right, let's see. Have I missed anything? All right. And thank you for bringing up that, basically that estate plan. That's an excellent idea. One thing that I should mention about the survivor benefit plan is when the retiree dies, the survivor does not have to pay the survivor benefit premiums anymore. That's only the retiree. So the survivor only receives the annuity. They don't have to worry about the premiums. That's a big weight off of the shoulders of the survivor. There are a lot who think they have to pay the premiums too.
No, yeah, that goes away as soon as the retiree passes away.
All right. Well, do you have any other words of wisdom you'd like to pass on to the audience?
No, I don't think so, DJ.
All right.
Thank you for the opportunity to share and help other soldiers. And I'm sure there's even Air Force and Navy people who listen to this. I think many of the, it's applicable, I believe, to all the branches equally.
Yeah, we've got a smattering of all components in the audience, so it is quite nice. I sometimes joke that that I need an interpreter to take all of my Army terminology and translate it into terms for the other branches, but trying to speak in simple English seems to be working for everybody. All right. Well, I do thank you so much for taking the time to be on this program. I appreciate you, even though you're sitting in an airport waiting to travel for other business. Thank you for being on the RC Retirement YouTube channel. And I hope that you might be willing to join me for a future episode sometime.
My pleasure.
All right. Well, thanks again, and good luck in the future.
Yes, sir. You too.
Thank you.
So that was a great interview with Nick. I hope that I can hear some more from him in the future, but as you heard, he did decide, it sounded like he was going to go to the retired reserve, which I also believe was the best decision for him. It took some convincing. He and I actually spoke on the phone at one point in order to make that decision, but ultimately, I think he went the right path, and things will be perfect, or, well, maybe not perfect, but things will be much better for him and his family. All right, so I hope that at least shed some light on how similar issues can pop up in other people's minds. It's very likely that what was going through his head is what was going through yours as well. If things were not said, if you had thoughts going through your head that were not expressed in that interview, please send me an email or put a comment on this episode. Let other people know what you thought so that we can discuss it and let others know what's being said, because the more information, the better. As you know, there are other resources out there. If you go to rcretirement.com, there's a world of other information that can be found. There are, of course, other episodes on the YouTube channel. There are other episodes on the podcast. There's a huge list of resources on rcretirement.com. There's a slowly growing list of shortwave radio program episodes. Please check out all of those. And, of course, there's always the ability to send me an email at dj@rcretirement.com, or to send me a message on the SpeakPipe widget, which all you have to do is make sure you have a working microphone and up to 3 minutes of spare time. And then you can send me your question or comment. So, that's all we have for this week. Thank you so much for being a part of this audience, and as always, thank you for your service. Have a great day.
If you liked what you heard on today's episode, then please go below and give it a thumbs up, and be sure to subscribe to this channel. Also, please let other people know about this channel and the information it can provide for them. If you have questions or comments, then have no qualms about posting them in the comments section below. Please remember the RC Retirement YouTube channel and the RC Retirement website are not recognized or endorsed by the Department of Defense, the Department of Veterans Affairs, or any other government agency. The information presented in these resources are for entertainment and informational purposes only. Also, the content of either of these resources should not be considered financial or legal advice. Please consult with your own legal counsel, accountant, and financial planner before making any decisions based on what you have learned here. As always, thank you for watching the RC Retirement YouTube channel.